The morning light slipped through the kitchen curtains in ribbons that day, quiet and golden, settling over the table where Michelle sat stirring her tea. She looked peaceful, her hair falling loose over one shoulder, her blouse pressed and simple, the faint scent of perfume rising as the warmth of her mug reached it. I remember thinking that if I didn't know her story, if I hadn't lived every step of it beside her, I might have mistaken her for any young woman preparing for another ordinary day. But that was the beauty of it, ordinary. "Do you know," she said suddenly, eyes still on the spoon as it circled the cup, "I've been dreaming of this since I was 12. Her voice carried the soft wonder of someone who'd only just realized she'd arrived somewhere she'd been walking toward her entire life. "I didn't know what to call it back then," she continued. "I just remember thinking how much I wanted to wake up and see myself in the mirror, already whole. Not in secret, not halfway. Just whole." I said nothing, afraid that if I spoke too soon, I might break the spell of her confession. "When I was a kid," she went on, "I used to imagine things like this morning. Sitting here, getting ready for work, dressed the way I want, hair how I like it. No questions, no explanations. Just normal." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "And now it's so normal I almost forget to notice." Her words hung between us for a moment. Simple, weightless, and yet they filled the whole room. At work, Michelle's world had become a portrait of quiet acceptance. Her colleagues spoke to her easily, joked with her about deadlines and coffee orders, asked her advice on wardrobe colors or where to find good shoes. No one stumbled over her name. It was just Michelle. "She's always so composed," one coworker told me once, when I stopped by to meet her after hours. "I don't know how she walks in those heels all day, but she does it with more balance than the rest of us." Michelle had heard the comment and laughed. "Practice," she said, tapping the floor lightly with her heel. "Confidence isn't natural. It's rehearsed until it feels like breathing." I watched her then, chatting easily by the door, hand resting lightly on the frame, her posture graceful but relaxed. There was nothing forced about her anymore. No sense of effort, no tension between how she appeared and who she was. She had become seamless. Her evenings were just as easy. Friends dropped by for dinner or to borrow clothes, the same way old friends do. They'd sit at the table, trading stories, teasing her for her perfectionist streak. She'd laugh and throw her head back, the same carefree sound that once filled our childhood afternoons. Mum often lingered in the doorway during these gatherings, watching her youngest move about the kitchen with practiced ease, serving food, topping off drinks, listening intently to every story. Later, after everyone had gone, Mum would turn to me and whisper, "She's so happy, isn't she?" "Yes," I'd say. "She really is." Because she was. One Saturday evening, after a long day of shopping and coffee, we ended up walking home beneath the streetlights. The air was mild, the pavement still holding the day's warmth. Michelle's heels clicked rhythmically beside me, the steady percussion of her life. "You ever think about those early days?" I asked. "When you used to sneak into my room?" "All the time," she said. "But not because I miss them. I just think. It's strange how far away that person feels now. Like she was waiting behind a curtain, holding her breath. And when she finally stepped out, everything got quiet." "Quiet?" I asked. "Yeah." She smiled. "Peaceful quiet. The kind that feels like truth." We kept walking in silence after that, the only sound the familiar echo of her heels and the soft hum of passing cars. For the first time, I understood that her journey wasn't just about becoming. It was about arriving. Now, mornings at our house carry a new kind of calm. Michelle gets ready for work in the same ritual she's perfected. The subtle perfume, the careful choice of earrings, the efficient swipe of lipstick. She moves with purpose, but without rush, humming as she fastens her watch or straightens the hem of her dress. Sometimes I catch her reflection in the hallway mirror as she passes. The quiet smile, the poised shoulders. And I see not transformation, but fulfillment. The dream she carried since she was 12 has settled into the rhythm of daily life. She doesn't need to chase it anymore. It lives here, in the small, graceful gestures of her morning routine, in the warmth of laughter shared with friends, in the respect of colleagues who see her only as she is. One night, as she prepared for bed, she turned to me with that same easy smile. "Do you ever think," she said, "that I'm finally boring?" Boring? I laughed. You're anything but. No, I mean. Normal. I used to wonder if I'd ever get to be normal. She paused, looking down at her folded hands. Now I think I've outgrown the word. It's not about normal. It's about peace. I nodded. You found it. She smiled, eyes soft. No, she said. We found it. And I realized she was right. Her peace had become all of ours. The quiet courage that carried her from borrowed clothes to boardrooms, from secrets to selfhood, had transformed the entire family without us even noticing. The dreams she'd once whispered to herself in childhood, of waking up, unafraid and whole, had finally taken root, not in ceremony, not in applause, but in the gentle rhythm of a life fully lived. And as I turned out the light that night, I thought, dreams don't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they slip softly into the room, sit down beside you, and pour themselves a cup of tea. By the time spring came again, the corset had become as much a part of Michelle's mornings as her first cup of tea. What began as a fondness after the wedding had quietly evolved into ritual. She now owned several. One soft gray, one pale cream, one the color of deep wine, and a black one she wore on days when she felt particularly decisive. They hung on the wardrobe door each evening, neat and expectant, waiting for morning. The house stirred early for workdays. Downstairs, the kettle hummed, the smell of toast drifted up the stairwell, and above it all came the soft rhythm of her morning routine. The opening of drawers, the quiet rustle of fabric, the scrape of a chair drawn closer to the mirror. Then came the call that began our day. Can someone help me with my laces? It was never an order, always a gentle request. Whoever was free, Mom, Dad, or I, would climb the stairs to her room, still half asleep, but smiling already. The ritual belonged to all of us now. The air in her room always smelled faintly of lavender and pressed linen. Michelle stood before the mirror, hair brushed smooth, the chosen corset already looped loosely around her. The morning light from her window would catch on the edges of satin, turning it to silver. Not too tight today, she'd say every time. I know, I'd answer every time. I took hold of the ribbons, steady and careful. As I pulled, the shape of the garment changed, gently, gradually, drawing the fabric closer until it fit her like intention. She'd breathe in once, deeply, and nod. That's it. Mom called it the family dance. Some mornings she took my place, her hands quick and sure from years of sewing. Other times Dad helped, surprisingly deft, his large hands patient as he checked the symmetry of the laces. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was ordinary, as familiar as passing the butter at breakfast. At first I thought it might feel strange, that an act so intimate could become so casual. But it wasn't intimacy we felt in those moments. It was reverence. A small gesture of care to start the day, like lighting a candle or tying a ribbon in one's hair. When the final bow was tied, Michelle would straighten, smoothing the fabric of her blouse over the corset, watching her reflection as if greeting a friend. Perfect, she'd say. Everything's where it should be. The corset was never about constraint. It was about composure. She described it once while we were driving to town. It's not about holding myself in, she said, eyes on the road, sunlight flashing through the windshield. It's about holding myself together. I liked that distinction. It wasn't armor, and it wasn't disguise. It was a quiet affirmation. A tactile reminder that she was shaped by her own choosing. At work, the corset remained invisible under blouses and jackets, yet its influence showed in every gesture. Her posture carried a steadiness that drew respect without demanding it. Coworkers commented on her elegance, assuming it was natural. Michelle never corrected them. It wasn't vanity that kept her so poised. It was gratitude. After all the years of uncertainty, of mirrors that didn't quite align, she'd built a frame she could trust. At breakfast, she joined us fully assembled. Tea in hand, blouse crisp, every line precise. You know, Dad said once, lowering his newspaper, you stand straighter than anyone I know. Michelle smiled. It's easy when you've had good help. We all laughed, but the remark held truth. The ritual belonged to the whole family now. It had become our shared act of love. Our silent chorus saying, we see you, we support you, we're proud. Sometimes, I caught Mom watching her afterward, a soft expression on her face. "You remember how small she looked in that first dress?" she'd whisper. "Now she looks like she could command a room." "She does," I said. Evenings, the process reversed. After dinner, Michelle would retreat to her room, untying the laces herself this time, patient and methodical. "It's like unbuttoning the day," she said once, folding the ribbon neatly. "Everything that held me up can rest too." She'd hang the corset on its wooden hanger, smoothing it flat, then step into her soft clothes. Leggings, a loose top, bare feet against the carpet. I'd see her then not as the elegant woman the world admired, but as my sister, grounded, gentle, still radiant but at ease. Sometimes she'd invite me in to talk while she brushed out her hair, her reflection calm and luminous in the vanity mirror. "You know," she said one night, "I used to think becoming myself meant changing everything. But it's really just about caring for the small things. Clothes, tea, morning light, family. That's what makes it real." Now, when I help her lace up in the mornings, I understand what she means. Each pull of the ribbon feels less like an act of tightening and more like a prayer. Steady hands shaping the day, binding it with patience and care. And when she stands there afterward, tall, composed, radiant in her stillness, I see not constraint but confidence. The corset has become her anchor, a symbol of the grace she's built through years of quiet resilience. If I had to describe it, I'd say it's like seeing sunlight caught in silk, strength and softness in perfect balance. Every morning, as the ribbons slip through my fingers and the bow settles neatly at her back, I realize we're not just helping her get dressed. We're helping her become. Again and again, one gentle knot at a time. By the time the weekend arrived, our house already felt like it was humming with plans. Saturday mornings had become something of a tradition. Coffee, chatter, and the soft rustle of hangers being sorted as Michelle and I decided what to wear. It wasn't just shopping anymore, it was ceremony, a small celebration of sisterhood that unfolded in fabric and laughter. This Saturday's mission was clear: new pieces to match Michelle's growing collection of corsets, tights, stockings, and a few finer things to complete her wardrobe. She'd been talking about it all week, making small lists on sticky notes, marking catalog pages with folded corners. Dad, who had long since learned that our excursions were more ritual than errand, smiled over his morning paper and handed Michelle a folded bill before we left. "For that black dress you've been staring at in the shop window," he said, "you might as well make it yours." Michelle blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" "Of course," he said. "You've worked hard." A little confidence never hurt anyone. She hugged him impulsively, leaving a faint scent of her perfume on his shoulder, and promised to show him what she picked. By 10 o'clock, we were out the door, the early sun bouncing off car windows, the air still cool enough to make jackets necessary. I wore a light trench over a slate blue sweater and jeans. Michelle had opted for a pale blush blouse tucked neatly into a knee-length skirt, her hair tied back in a ribbon that matched the color of her shoes. Her heels, modest for once, barely 4 inches, clicked a cheerful rhythm as we walked toward the boutique-lined street. "Do you ever realize how much we talk about clothes?" I asked as we passed a florist, the scent of lilacs trailing behind us. She laughed. "It's not about clothes. It's about joy. You just can't fold joy and put it on a hanger. But you can try." Inside the first shop, the air smelled faintly of cedar and perfume. Rows of silk and lace, drawers of neatly rolled stockings, racks of cardigans and blouses. It was a world that seemed designed for quiet discovery. Michelle moved through it like someone greeting old friends, touching fabrics lightly, tilting her head as she examined details. A saleswoman greeted us with a warm smile. "You two look so alike," she said. "Sisters?" "Yes," Michelle answered without hesitation, her tone bright and proud. "We are." The words landed softly, but carried weight. I felt them settle in the space between us like sunlight through glass. We gathered what we came for first. New hosiery in neutral tones, a few patterned tights for fun, and pieces that would pair with her corsets without fuss. Michelle had a knack for finding elegance in the simplest items. "Texture," she said, holding a pair of soft beige stockings to the light. "It's all about how it feels, not just how it looks." We moved from one shop to another, laughing at window displays that took themselves too seriously, sharing sips of coffee from paper cups. At one point, we ducked into a small boutique where the owner, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, immediately seemed to take a liking to Michelle. "You have an eye for detail," she told her as Michelle examined a tailored jacket. "It's rare these days to see someone care about craftsmanship." Michelle smiled. "It's how I was raised," she said, glancing at me. "In a house where details mean love." The woman nodded, approving. "That's the right kind of home, then." By early afternoon, our arms were full of small bags, each carefully tied with ribbon. We stopped for lunch at a cafe near the corner of the square. A place with mismatched chairs and wide windows. The hum of conversation around us was soft and steady, the kind of background music that makes you feel part of something larger. Michelle took a sip of her iced tea and leaned back, a satisfied smile spreading across her face. "You know," she said, "I used to dream about days like this. Not the shopping exactly, but the comfort. The ease. Just being out, laughing, being seen, and not thinking twice about it." I nodded. "And now it's just Saturday." "Exactly," she said, smiling. "It's not special anymore. And that's what makes it so special." After lunch, we found the dress. It hung in the display window of a boutique near the end of the street, the same one Michelle had admired for weeks. Black leather, sleek and sharp, with a simple neckline and just enough structure to look timeless rather than daring. She stopped in front of the glass, her reflection merging with the mannequins. "Still think about it every time we walk by," she admitted. "Dad gave you the green light," I reminded her. "You'd better try it before someone else does." Inside, the boutique was quiet, the lighting soft. When Michelle stepped out of the fitting room wearing the dress, the entire space seemed to pause. It wasn't just that she looked beautiful, though she did. It was the way she carried herself, the calm certainty in her shoulders, the quiet pride that came from knowing the mirror was finally honest. I grinned. "That's the one." She turned, inspecting the silhouette. "It feels like confidence stitched together." "Then buy it," I said. "That's what Dad wanted for you." When she handed over the money, she did so with the same reverence she'd once reserved for trying on her first dress at 14. I realized then that some moments never lose their magic, they just grow quieter. We drove home with the radio low, shopping bags rustling softly in the back seat. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in amber and rose. Michelle rested her head against the window, watching the light shift over the passing fields. "Do you ever think," she said, "how much of life is made of these small things? A good dress, a kind word, someone to share it with." "I think that's all of it," I replied. When we reached home, Dad was waiting on the porch. "So?" he asked, pretending not to be curious. Michelle held up the boutique's black and gold bag, smiling. "It's perfect." "Good," he said. "Then it's worth every penny." Mum joined us in the doorway, taking in the sight of us. Wind tousled, laughing, arms full of the day's finds. "Looks like my girls had a successful outing," she said. And we had. Not because of what we bought, but because of what we carried home. The simple joy of being sisters, of belonging, of moving through the world side by side, with nothing left to hide. As we climbed the stairs that evening, Michelle turned and whispered, "Thanks for coming with me." I smiled. "Always. Because that's what sisters do." They turn errands into rituals, shopping trips into stories, and simple Saturdays into reminders that life, when lived truthfully, can feel like celebration. The black leather dress became more than a purchase. Even as it hung on the back of Michelle's bedroom door, it seemed to radiate quiet confidence. It was short, sleek, and structured with a precision that caught the light just enough to hint at motion. When she wore it, she didn't look like someone trying to be bold. She looked like someone who finally understood her own reflection. The first evening she put it on, I was sitting on her bed, thumbing through a magazine, half paying attention as she prepared for a night out. "You'll be late if you keep fussing," I warned. "I'm not fussing," she said, turning in front of the mirror. "I'm making sure it feels like me." The dress fit her like certainty. Sheer tights gave the look a soft edge, and her favorite 6-inch heels, the ones she claimed she could run a mile in, completed it. Her hair, loose and lightly waved, caught the lamplight like ribbon. The faint scent of jasmine followed her as she moved. "Too much?" she asked, checking her reflection one more time. "Not for who you are now," I said honestly. "It's perfect." She smiled and turned once more, letting the skirt move with her, the sound of the fabric low and smooth. Then it settled, she said. This one's for evenings when I don't need to be careful. That line stayed with me long after she'd gone. There was something liberating about it. About watching her embrace every shade of herself without apology. The girl who had once tiptoed through life now strode across the world in 6-inch heels, owning the space she once tried to disappear into. When she came home that night, the dress still looked impeccable. It was perfect, she said simply, kicking off her shoes. It's strange. I used to worry that I had to choose between being gentle and being strong. But I think I can be both. I nodded. You always could. You just needed a dress that reminded you. Over the weeks that followed, the leather dress appeared again and again. Dinners with friends, evening concerts, quiet walks through the city when the streetlights shimmered on the pavement. It wasn't her everyday self, but it was a part of her she enjoyed visiting. At work she was still the image of calm professionalism, neat skirts, soft fabrics, and tones of cream or gray. But on weekends, when the dress came out, it was as if she shed formality in favor of something daring, something entirely her own. There were nights when she'd ask me to help zip it up, standing at her mirror with her hair pinned to one side, the faint glint of excitement in her eyes. I like the way it changes how I move, she admitted. It's not about showing off. It's about feeling present. Confident, I offered. She nodded. Exactly. Confident and a little electric. Watching her, I began to see two harmonies in her. Like notes from the same melody. One was the graceful rhythm of the girl in knee-length dresses, with soft fabrics and thoughtful gestures. The other, the low, pulsing confidence of a woman in leather who knew exactly who she was. Neither erased the other. They existed together, equal and balanced. When she wore her work clothes, her movements were measured, her voice calm, her laughter gentle. But in the leather dress, she became kinetic energy, made visible. Head high, stride long, eyes bright. It was never arrogance. It was fluency in selfhood. And yet, even in her boldness, there remained the same kindness, the same steady heart. After every evening out, she would return home humming, barefoot by the time she reached the stairs, pausing to whisper goodnight through my half-open door. Get some sleep, she'd say, her tone soft again, her glamour folded neatly away until morning. One evening, I asked her if she ever worried people would judge the contrast. The quiet office professional and the striking woman who turned heads at night. She smiled, brushing her hair from her face. No, she said. They're both me. I used to think I had to live as one or the other, but now I understand they balance each other. The grace reminds me to stay kind. The confidence reminds me I belong. It was an answer that sounded simple, but it carried the weight of every year she'd spent learning it. The leather dress still hangs near the front of her wardrobe, its fabric catching the light like ink. Every so often, she'll brush a hand over it before choosing something else, and I can tell she's remembering how it feels. Not just on her skin, but in her spirit. When I see her now, walking across a room, sometimes in soft cotton, sometimes in sleek leather, I see a woman who's finally found her equilibrium. She is grace and boldness, gentleness and power, a whisper and a flame. And as her sister, standing quietly in the doorway as she checks her reflection one last time, I understand that the black leather dress isn't just clothing. It's a symbol of everything she's become, a reminder that strength and softness can live comfortably in the same heart. And that sometimes, the most beautiful thing a person can wear is the peace of knowing who they are. Don't stop now. See what happens next. Subscribe for more every week. Hit the bell and stay part of the story.